Hey everybody, it's me, Shalita O'Neill, founder and CEO of Fostering Change Network and the founder of the Nonprofit Visionary Academy. I am in a different place today. Different background. You got to move things around sometimes. I'm gonna give you guys a couple of minutes, as always, to join in before we get started. Today, we're going to be talking about how do you deal with divisive board members. Okay, because I've had a lot of questions around building a board. Where do you go to get good, competent people? Different questions like that. Hey, Alana. Yeah, sometimes you got to switch it up. I don't care where I am. I'm gonna make sure you guys get this information. Okay, so I'm gonna give everybody a couple minutes to join, and then we'll go ahead and get started because I got some good juicy, content for you today. Because sometimes hashtag nonprofit no filter. People want to sugarcoat things, don't really want to talk about certain things, but no, we're going to talk about it because it's really important. People are complex as it is. So you're bound to get somebody or run into somebody that happens to be on your board that you're like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have invited them on the board, or, what do I do now? So I give you guys a second, okay? Come on now. Come gather around, y'all. Let's do this. Got some goodness for you. Got my notes over here too, so make sure I stay on task and on topic, okay? Because sometimes, Leader Boo like to, digress. I said before I was going to have some music for you guys. Okay. Oh, happy birthday, Alana. Everybody say happy birthday, Alana. I hope you have a beautiful day. Yes, please share. Okay. And everybody else too, please, if you're watching this, this is a topic that's come up in conversation with other people, or you see the value in sharing, please share this. Please like it. We don't want to just hoard information and keep it to ourselves. We definitely want to get it out there to people who could benefit from it, okay? So thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Alana. All right, I'll give you guys another minute or so to come on and tune into this conversation. Okay, what time is it? All right, it's 12:02. At 12:03, we're going to get started. All right, and it's going to be talking about how do you deal with a divisive board member. Hey, Mo, good afternoon. Thanks for joining. Yes, we have all had, I know I've had my run-ins sometimes. If you're after running an organization for 8 years and starting an organization, from the ground up and choosing board members, I've had a number of different groups of board members, because people will transition off after their term is up, and then you want new people to come on. So you have an opportunity to really experience different personalities, and certain situations may arise where everyone doesn't get along, or you may come across a board member that's not as supportive, and initially maybe they seemed like they were going to be supportive, but for some reason things have changed and now they're a thorn in your side. So that has happened to me a couple of times, and I've had to really figure my way out of that strategically, because ultimately you're a nonprofit visionary and you want your organization to be successful, and you really don't have time to bicker in-house or to have any issues with your board or even with your staff, because there's enough issues that you're going to have to work through together on the outside externally to create the resources that you're in, the programs that you're trying to create. So really we want to nip any issues in the bud and make sure that everything inside the house is going well, and that we're all working together. Hey Ange, hey Ashley, thank y'all for joining. So let's jump into it then. So how do you deal with a divisive board member? So first, today I really just want to talk about prevention, number one, because if we can avoid ourselves from getting in situations like that and attracting people like that, then that's the best policy. So let's try to prevent people from getting on the board that are going to ultimately be divisive. Secondly, maybe sometimes people get through that. Everything started off wonderfully and then something changed and that person has become toxic. Then we're going to talk about, okay, well, what are some things that you want to do in those instances, okay? And then some advice for the nonprofit visionaries. As the founder of this organization, just some tips that I've learned along the way that will be helpful to you as you may be experiencing these issues. That's right. Hey, nonprofit Easter, guys. Hashtag nonprofit Easter. Okay. Yeah, that's my new name. Okay. So first and foremost, when you're looking for quality board members, you want to make sure, and I went over this in a video before. You want to make sure that you're vetting people, period, and making sure that they have the right set of qualifications, the right qualities. You don't just want the first person that says they want to be on your board to say, oh yes, that's great, come on. Especially, sometimes friends and family members want to come on and help you, but sometimes that's not the best policy. You want to make sure that the people that you bring on are vetted, that they are connected, and that they really understand what it is that they're going to be doing for your organization. So to prevent getting some sour grapes in the beginning, what you want to make sure you have in place so that everybody's clear, on the same page. You want to make sure you have your board expectations. You want to make sure that you have an application for people to fill out so that you get a little bit more information about them. You can see what their interests are. You can, make sure that they understand through the document, the board expectations document, which I've provided previously, and I'll also reattach in the Nonprofit Visionaries Facebook group. If you're a part of that, again, I say it all the time, guys, I like to put extra information in there. If you're not, go on ShalitaO'Neal.com or nonprofitista.com and sign up for a hashtag nonprofit no filter membership, and that gives you access to that group, to extra and additional supports. So you want to make sure you have that board expectations document, so it outlines what is the role of the board, what is the role of the organization, so people coming into it up front know what they're getting into. You don't want to surprise people down the line and then you don't make your expectations clear, and then they're like, well, you didn't tell me this in the beginning. So make sure up front you have you're vetting people, you have your bylaws are very clear about who you are, what you're trying to do, what you're expecting from your board, and you have an application, okay? And then so that it's clear, it's lined up front, because people will weed themselves out. If they're like, oh, okay, that's just too much, I don't want to do that, people will weed themselves out in that case. When you come forth like your business and you know what you're expecting and you're firm in that, then only people, for the most part, who appreciate that, respect that, and want to be a part of that will move forward with you. Okay, so you want to make sure you do that. Another thing you want to do on the prevention side is make sure when you're developing your bylaws that you have a term limit for board members. There's some organizations out here who there is no term limit. People have been on the board for 75 years. Same people, 75 years. Nothing's changed. People just come to a meeting and that's it. No. Make sure you have term limits. And people might say, well, what is that? Sometimes you can have a year term limit. You can even have a probationary period for board members, maybe 30 to 90 days to kind of feel things out and see if it's a good fit. It's up to you how you want to do it. I know for me, I believe I had a 3-year term limit. It was a 1 year for directors and 3 years for board members. So every year the directors could either, we could revote them in as a board and they could serve another term, or they can determine, okay, well, I want to transition either off the board or just in a regular board member seat. So you want to make sure you have that, because if you have someone that's toxic, at least you can, you understand that, well, they're only going to be here for a year or it's time limited, so they can transition off and they just don't get voted back on the board. So make sure you have term limits in place. Don't just, and it's in your bylaws and it's clear what those term limits are. So if someone needs to transition off or it's not a good fit, that's one way that you can, you can make sure that you clear the air and make room for some fresh air and help and support. Another thing I would say is make sure in your bylaws that you have a clause in there that explains what do you do if there is a dysfunctional or a board member that's not working out? You want to have either a mediation process or some sort of process that's written in your bylaws that you can go to in that instance, and that could look a couple of different ways. So it's really up to you, and those are up to you and your initial board as well, who's going to be looking through the bylaws or helping you to determine what the bylaws should look like. But make sure your bylaws, that is like your Bible. That's your organization's Bible. So you want to make sure that you think of as much as you possibly can to put in there around your processes, around what your organization is doing, what your expectations are, how things are to be handled. And if you come across a hostile board member or divisive board member, there should be a clause in there on how do you deal with that and how do you mediate that situation so you have a way out, so you're not just stuck trying to weather the storm and wait for them to leave. Okay, so make sure you do that. Another thing I would say on the prevention side is make sure you have ongoing board development workshops. And, a lot of people don't think of that. It's a group of people coming together to help you support your mission, but that doesn't mean they don't need ongoing training. Everybody needs ongoing training. And you may have some board members who are good at fundraising or good at outreach and others that are not, but maybe they could be. So you always want to make sure that you're developing just as much as you're putting effort into, we talk about staff development and your other resources that you're developing as far as human capital. You want to make sure you do the same thing for your board as well. So make sure there are free opportunities to get, board training, board development, things like that as well. But make sure that you can write that into your bylaws as well, or your organizational policies as well, to make sure that you're giving your board ongoing support so they don't feel like they're just, out there to their own devices. So that is on the prevention side. And you guys know, I'll come back and go back through everything just to make sure, there aren't any questions or anything. But that's prevention. So let's say, okay, well, I did all those things and I had the application and I had the board expectations. And trust me, I've been in situations where I've had all those things. But then, and everything started out great, with a board member. And then things went south. And there's no way for you to really, you don't understand other people's perspectives or what might trigger someone or what might be happening in somebody else's life, that now things have changed for them and now they're treating you differently or their attitude towards the organization differently. And so what do? So first and foremost, make sure that it's an actual issue, because sometimes it could just be a difference in opinion. And nothing deeper than that. I'm a little firecracker. So, when I first started my organization, it seemed like somebody was rising up, trying to, damper what we were trying to do. I was quick to, but sometimes you have to stop for a second and look at the picture, the overall picture, because you don't want yes people on your board. You don't just want people there just there to smile at you all the time and say, yeah, that was a brilliant idea. That was, I agree with you. You don't want that. You really don't want that. You want people who are going to push back or have a difference of opinion in a respectful manner. So make sure that it's not that situation where they just don't, maybe they have a different opinion or stand on a different, have a different stance than some of the other board members. That can be valuable because that person is going to help you think through different scenarios and, look at the picture from a different angle than what everybody else would. So they're still valuable to keep some sort of balance there. But if you have someone who's actively divisive, calling secret meetings behind your back with other board members, having discussions that you're not privy to, or that involve you, or with the intention of undercutting you, or with the intention of causing a rift in the board, because ultimately, as a nonprofit visionary, this is your baby. Like, this is your organization. It's different, if somebody was hired into an organization as an executive director, the dynamics are different, but we're talking about you. This is your baby. You started this organization, so you should be in on conversations that have anything to do with with your organization or with how things are happening. Now, sometimes it might be a situation where there's things you have to recuse yourself from. You can't be a part of conversations, as it pertains to maybe your evaluation or, your pay or something like that, but as far as the meat and potatoes of what's going on in the organization. You should be a part of those conversations. So if you have someone who is at one point just, sort of telling you one thing in a meeting, and then going to other board members and trying to pretty much stage a coup, or get you out of the organization, there's some things that you want to make sure you look out for. Okay, so excuse me, and you have to be careful, because even though you are the founder and you're the executive director, you are a staff person. And again, I've shared this with you guys before. Nonprofit, yes, it's your baby, but it belongs to the board. Legally, this is the board's organization. So you have to be careful. And that's why you have to be careful about who you bring onto the board in the first place, because technically, if they don't like you anymore, or if the board comes to a consensus that you are not good for the organization, and this toxic person is planting seeds and has been able to turn everyone against you, then you can be fired. And yes, it happens. People are ousted of their own organization that they started by sour board members, or it can start with one or two board members that really sours the entire bunch and then kicks you out. So you really want to be sensitive and careful and cautious about how you handle or interact with toxic board members. And it can be even difficult if it's your president, in certain situations. I mean, again, I'm transparent with you guys. I've been through the situation. The president of the board is supposed to be someone you respect, that respects you. Your expectations are clear. You're going to be working closely together. When and if that partnership or relationship goes sour, it's very difficult. That can be a very difficult and straining situation. So you want to be, careful and about that. So it's not necessarily you going to address a toxic board member and saying, especially if it's the president. Okay, you want to make sure that maybe the people who you've brought on the board. See, this is strategy for everything. The people who you brought on the board, because sometimes other board members will suggest and bring on board members that you don't know. And you've never met them, but the consensus of the board is that we need these people. We're going to bring them on. They're going to help. So what you want to do is make sure that you reach out to someone that you trust on the board, that you have a relationship with, that you brought in, who respects you, and you let them know what are some of the things that you're experiencing with this potentially toxic board member, and you let them bring it to the board. You let another board member bring it to the board's attention, or pull that person to the side who's toxic to have a conversation with them. You don't do it. Okay, you don't jump out there, because it's going to get ugly, and then you could lose your job. And we don't want that, because you started the organization. So make sure, one, that you're also, another thing I would say, that you're keeping the people who you brought on your board engaged, right? The people who have a connection with you, everybody on the board should be engaged, should be informed. One thing that was helpful for me when I was going through different, these situations, was to reach out to board members one-on-one, have a conversation with them one-on-one, let them know what's going on with you, provide documentation for everything. Okay, everything needs to be backed up with supporting documentation, especially the correspondence that you have with the potentially toxic or divisive board member. You want to make sure that you have it in writing, or have documentation around conversations, especially email conversations. You don't want to have just a one-on-one email conversation with someone who's toxic. You want to copy another board member so that they are aware of the conversation, because then it could be a situation where I never said that, or that's not what happened. No, make sure you have a witness to your correspondence with this person, and that you have, if they ask you to do something, especially if it's the president of the board and they've asked you to do something, you make sure you do it, and you make sure that you back it up with documentation, so that people will know that, everything is factual. All right. So make sure, again, I can't stress enough that you're touching base one-on-one with your board members. You keep that line of communication open. You build, and even with the ones who are new, who you don't know, who someone else voted onto the board, you want to make sure that you're keeping up with them, that you're building that rapport with them, because respect is key. and they have to believe in you and believe that you are capable and competent of doing the job. And when this other divisive person comes along and says, you know what, Shalita said, or, this, I think that she meant that. No, they can say, well, you know what, I was actually in on that conversation, or actually she spoke to me and she brought me up to speed on that. And this is, all right. So always cover your tail. Okay. Always have someone in on the conversation. Always keep everything in writing. Okay. And I would say don't wait to the last minute to address issues that you see. If you see something's getting out of hand, or you see a board member or two are sort of collecting together and doing things, divisive or against the best interests of the organization, make sure you address it quickly. Make sure you talk, to, again, the board members that you've brought on that trust you, that are pretty much on your side. Let's be real. Let's be real, guys. Not hashtag nonprofit, no filter. There are going to be people that you bring on your board. They have allegiance to you. They love you. They respect you. Okay? And so they are here to help and support you, and they want to see your dream, and they want to see the best interests of the organization move forward. They will take your side. Okay? If you're keeping them in the loop of about what you're doing, and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're handling your business, they're going to have your back. They're going to have your back before they have the back of a board member they don't know, or whom they in their mind may have had some red flags go up about them. So you want to make sure that everything's strategy. Make sure that you're keeping them in the loop of things, and you're planting seeds with them, because they're going to be the ones that are going to need to bring it to the entire board's attention. Okay? So make sure that you're addressing it, because what you don't want to happen is you don't address it, you ignore it, you hope it goes away, and then it gets worse. So good board members do not want to be around toxic people. And most people don't like conflict. So they'll just step off the board, and before you know it, the toxic people are left, and everybody else who was good have left the board because they don't want to deal with it. And nobody else is bringing the issue up at a meeting, or nobody else is addressing it. You've got these toxic, divisive people that, every board meeting you can't get anything done because they're arguing, because they're trying to point, your flaws out and issues. People get tired of it, and instead of them fighting, they're going to leave. So you want to make sure in the beginning you nip it in the bud. You let someone know who you trust, or the people on the board who came in because of you, who trust and love you and understand you and respect you. You want to let them know what's going on ahead of time, so that they can then address the issue with that other board member and bring it up to everyone else. And hopefully, if it is a case where this person is being divisive, nasty, and operating against the best interest of the organization, and you have in your bylaws a clause that walks you through and walks the board through how to remove that person, the board can remove them for you, and you don't get involved in that. You don't jeopardize your position. Okay? So address the issues head on, up front, through one of your board members that you trust, and let them bring it up to the entire board before you look up, and the only people you have left are your divisive people, and all your good people have left because they have no time for foolishness. That has happened to me a couple times. People just leave. Really good people leave. And especially if they were, you had some sort of friendship, or, before that, and that's how you engage them around your organization. It's sad when they're like, okay, and then they step away, and that gets a little hazy, because they'll step away and they won't talk to you for a little bit, because of all this. They don't know how to come to you and say, I left because this person was pressuring me, or, I've had that happen. I've had, people who I've loved very dearly and really respected, who I didn't hear from them. They left the board, they resigned, I didn't hear from them. And then later on they tell me, oh, well, the board, this or this toxic person was meeting behind your back. And to this day, people won't even tell me what this other divisive board member was saying about me, because it was that toxic. So ultimately, that board member stepped down on his or her own and left, because they realized that their efforts to really turn things against me and turn things against the organization were futile, and they left, thank goodness. But it was stressful, y'all. Okay, so just make sure, um, just make sure that you address the issue as soon as possible once you actually know that this person is being disruptive and not just having a difference of opinion. Okay, so and I think I've gone over the advice, for nonprofit visionaries for you. Keep everything in writing. Everything in writing. Everything in writing. And always have somebody else in on the conversation when you're dealing with this person. And collect information. If it's a situation where you have a board member that's using your or going to an event, and then instead of supporting your event, at this event that they're at, they're marketing themselves, or they're trying to use your events and your networks and your pools for your nonprofit for themselves, for personal gain. Okay, and someone comes to you and tells you that, put it in writing. Have someone put the instance in writing. What happened? When did it happen? Put it in writing. Okay, everything in writing, and collect your information. Look, my bachelor's is in criminology and criminal justice, so please, everything's in writing. Okay, and don't play and get recorded. Okay, when it comes down to my organization or to the things that are important to me, and I hope this is the same for you. Don't play about your organization within legal rights, but make sure that you have conversations, you have emails, you have things in writing, everything to document what's happening so that you can provide that information to a board member who you trust and who trusts you and who's on your side, so that they can then take that information to the entire board and they can have a conversation without you to nip it in the bud and hold that board member or those board members accountable. All right? So I think earlier I saw a question. Could you also serve as your own president? So if you could be the president and executive director, or president and CEO. I mean, CEO is typically used for profits, but more and more nonprofits are using that position description. And one of the reasonings behind it is because, when you're wanting to build relationships with corporate sponsors or corporate entities, to be on the same footing with them, so to speak, people like to refer to themselves with a nonprofit executive as a CEO as well. So they understand that although this is nonprofit, you're a nonprofit and they're a corporation, you two have the same role and you have the same weight behind you as well. So some people like to do that. It's really up to you. But as far as serving in both roles, as you start out, you're a nonprofit visionary. You're not going to have staff right away. So if you are serving as the president, and you're also the executive director, or, that happens. Okay. Now, so you might have to remove yourself from certain, if you're voting with your board on something that has something to do staff-wise or with your salary or things like that, you might have to step back from that conversation and, not participate. But for the time being, as you're trying to find someone to step into that role, you can be the president and CEO or president and executive director for the time being. I suggest that at some point you separate them, because the roles can become, there could be conflict there. There could be just a little bit too much headache with you wearing two hats. But so to answer that, when you're first starting out, you might need to start out as the president, because then sometimes people don't want to be the executive director either. So you're going to be looking for an executive director to fill your position, and you might want to continue to be the president. So initially, yes, it's fine. Okay. I hope that answered I think Ashley asked that question. I hope that answered your question. Anybody else have any questions? And thank you guys for sharing the video. Hey, Mom. Thanks for sharing the video. Again, please, if this is good information, somebody that can benefit from this, like it, share it, pass it on, because this is going to help somebody avoid some really big heartaches, and some issues. All right, so let's go back. Let's recap. So we're talking about divisive board members. You want to be on the prevention side as much as you possibly can. You want to make sure you put things in place to protect your organization and also to protect you, because this is your baby. And not everybody is going to have the same amount of passion for what you're doing as you. You're never going to find someone who's going to be as passionate about your organization as you are. So understand that. But at the same token, you can put things in place to make sure that you're recruiting and you're the right people, and you're vetting people before you even get to this. So first and foremost, you want to make sure you have a board application. And again, I think I've actually put and template to this in the Nonprofit Visionaries Facebook group, but I'll put another one. I'll repost it just in case, so it's easy for you guys to find. Again, if you're not part of that Facebook group, go to ShalitaO'Neal.com or nonprofitista with an H on the end.com to see how you can sign up to be a part of that. Excuse me. So you want to make sure you have your board application. You want to make sure you have your board expectations, just a document that outlines what your organization is. What do you expect from your board? What types of roles are you looking for? And what are the responsibilities of people in those roles? Be very clear in the beginning about who you are and what you're trying to do, and the types of people that you're looking to recruit or engage. You want to make sure that their qualities, that they're just not the first person that raises their hands. You guys, I tell you all the time, we're humble. We're like, oh, we're just so happy that anybody is happy to help us. No. What you're doing is life-changing. It's going to change the world, and that's the stance and the mindset that you take with it. You don't want just anybody, because not just anybody is going to be able to help you. They can lip service is people do a lot of lip service, but when it comes down to doing the work, people back off. So you want to vet people. Make sure you know what their qualifications are. That you're very deliberate about, are they a good fit? How do they present? What are their qualities? All of that up front beforehand. Make sure in your bylaws you actually have a clause in that bylaw that states, how do you deal with divisive board members? What happens to someone if they decide they want to, they become toxic, or there's just, you can't reconcile with a board member, and the best thing for them to do is to part the organization. Make sure there's a process in your bylaws that addresses that, so you have some recourse. Also, make sure that you have term limits for your board members. Don't just, they can come on and stay on for the rest of their lives. No, and not to say they can't be re-voted on, or they can't, come back in after their year or after their 3 years, but make sure there's a process in place so you don't get stuck with people who are toxic, who are stagnant, and, that are just there taking up space. Okay, so either some people, again, can do a probationary period. They may say, okay, for the first 30 to 60 days or maybe 90 days, just like with employment, we are going to, let's see how this works out. And then after that, if you like it, if you're still invested and it's a good fit, then we'll officially have you as a board member. You could do that, or you can have, just a 1-year term limit, maybe for officers, or 3 years for board members. However you want to do it, whatever you think is fair. Put a limit on terms so you don't get stuck with toxic people. Also, make sure you are pouring into your board development. There's different organizations out there, and this is something that I do as well as part of coaching. If you need that support, let me know. But ongoing board development, you want to make sure that they understand what their role is and that they have the support that they need to continually, grow into their role as a board member. And when they do that, it's more about the best interest of the organization. It's less likely they're going to want to be toxic and start issues and things like that. No. So prevention, first and foremost. Now, let's say you did all the prevention and they got in there. Just like when, I've had to hire people, and the interview is amazing, and they're passionate, and they say all the right things. And then they come in for the job, and they're crazy, and they're not doing anything, and they done dyed their hair, or they done did, people are good. Some people are good about putting on a good show and then switching it on you. So you want to be careful about that as well. But there's only but so much you can do in that instance. So let's say this board member got through the vetting process. They said they understand your expectations and they're down for it and whatever, and then something happens and there's a shift, and now they're working to try to get you out, or they're working to try to be in device against the best interest of the organization. Now guys, let me tell you something. I'm assuming as a nonprofit visionary, of course you want what's best in the best interest of your nonprofit and your organization, but again, if you get to a point where you're doing things against what the organization, what you originally set the organization up to be, and against your mission, or you're, some people underhand things, or get a little, distracted and start, and your board, works towards getting you out, then that's rightfully so. That's rightfully so, because you have to, it's all about the best interest of the organization. So don't confuse that. Don't confuse a board member trying to bring something to your attention, or, help you to see something that's in the best interest of the organization, with someone who is just nasty and just want to get you out just because they have this idea of you in their mind. Okay, so know the difference. It's about the best interest. But let's say they get through, they're nasty, they're divisive. You want to make sure that, after you've already determined, are they divisive, or, you don't want to, again, if someone has a difference of opinion from you and the other board members, that doesn't mean that they're being divisive. It doesn't mean that they're toxic. It just means they have a difference of opinion. You need people like that to balance things out, especially when it's coming from a real place and a valid place. So let's say we go through that, but no, they're crazy. They just try and get you out. They just, they jealous, they angry, they can't, okay. Well, the board, one or two board members, or however many board members that you brought in, that are connected to you, that respect you, that really are on your side. When you got to pick a side, they're going to pick your side. You want to make sure you go to them and you express what's going on with this other board member or these other board members, and have your documentation. There is no gossiping. There's no, let's be factual. Let's be professional about this. Bring the information to them and let them address it. And hopefully, again, if in your bylaws, if you have that clause about how to deal with toxic board members, then they will at least have some sort of recourse, or have some sort of support to get that person or those people out, because then the board is responsible for voting them out and catching it in the beginning, because you don't want the board to splinter, and then you have good people that leave because they're tired of dealing with nonsense, and then you're stuck with the people who are toxic behind, and then that's a really crazy situation. You might just end up quitting and leaving and start another organization, if you get to that point. So make sure you address the issues up front, okay? But you have to watch yourself as the executive director at that point. If you're not serving in both roles and you're the executive director, you have to be careful about how you interact with your board, because they are the boss. It's your vision. It's their organization by law and by governance. So watch yourself and be strategic about how you interact. And when you're in these meetings and you have these toxic people there, keep your cool. Be professional. Whether you got to count to 10 in your mind, or you got to imagine yourself beating them up in your mind, but you don't say anything, stay professional. I've had to do that. I have a little temper, It takes a time to get there. But for me, I've had to develop over the years as a nonprofit visionary to understand that not everything requires you to react to it. Okay, and sometimes the toxic people on your board, or that toxic person, will try to push you, or instigate to get you to act a certain way in front of everyone, so they can say, see what I mean? She's unstable, or she's not emotionally intelligent enough, or this or that. So make sure that you keep your cool, you keep your calm, you keep your composure, understanding that this is chess. Okay, this is a chess game of strategy, and that you've already reached out and been in contact with each board member, especially those who are close to you, about what's going on with facts, documentation. You come to the meeting with emails printed out, with correspondence, that you've had with this individual around whatever issue it is. Okay, so just keep your cool and smile. Okay, and we do that. So yes, I think we've brought, everything, the most important things, around how do you deal with divisive board members, and just understand that people are complex. It's okay if, you end up bringing a divisive person on and you don't even know. Don't beat yourself up about it. Don't blame yourself about it. Just make sure that you learn from the experience. And there's going to be a lot of things, just outside of even with board members, that you're going to learn as being a nonprofit visionary that nobody could have prepared you for. It's just part of the experience that you're going to see, and it's all right. Just keep your head up and keep going. Don't let people discourage you. People are complex. Sometimes it's about, most times whatever they're projecting onto you is a reflection of how they feel about themselves. There's something in you that triggers them, and so they feel like they have to teach you a lesson, or there's an expectation that you didn't have, you didn't make clear in the beginning, or that they didn't make clear that they had of you in the beginning, that hasn't been fulfilled, and so they wig out and start acting crazy. In my situation, I believe that's probably what it is. When I first started out, I did not know what to expect of people. I was just happy that people wanted to be a part of things. I didn't know what they expected of me, and they didn't voice that. And so when there's a disconnect with that, people show all kinds of colors. So just make sure that as best you can, you prevent that by making sure the foundation is set up, that you have your paperwork, you have everything that you need in place, and that you govern yourself accordingly. Okay, guys, so if there's any other questions, anybody have any questions about that? Any specific situation? I mean, you may not want to share it here. You might just want to, inbox me or whatever. But that's how you deal with divisive board members. Okay, keep it professional and keep it moving. You have to be strategic about relationships. Again, it's all about building relationships. Everything that we're doing with your organization is building relationships, and that involves people. Okay. All right, so that has been our hashtag nonprofit no filter discussion for today. On Friday, we're going to be talking about board member election processes. A number of you have asked, what's the voting process? What should I do? What should I put in place? You're not quite sure what it is. So I'll be giving a couple of different examples of how you can actually, initially things are done. You're inviting people onto the board. It's sort of, it's formal, but it's informal, and they, understanding that they're the founding board members, but you're going to be adding people along the way. And so you need to have a process on how you vote people in and how you promote people to directors positions. So I'll make sure that we go over that on Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern. So make sure that you tune in for that. Also, I want to give you guys a heads up. Make sure that you follow me on Twitter at nonprofitista with an H on the end, and I'll put that in the description as well, so that I'm trying to build it up, y'all. Come on now, come on, support. We got to get this information out to as many people as possible, and I really do appreciate your support. I also want you to go on the website nonprofitista.com or shalitaoneal.com and take a look at the hashtag nonprofit no filter boot camp that we have coming up March 25th and 26th. So if you're really serious and need some hands-on support around taking your nonprofit to the next level, or at least getting it out of your head and onto paper, and getting connected to a network of people who can support you as you build your nonprofit, then make sure that you register and you sign up for that. There'll be some perks and things like that, because I like little perks to give out perks. So make sure you do that. All right. So today is Wednesday. Happy hump day, y'all. I hope you have a blessed one. Enjoy the rest of your week. And if you need me, let me know. Be blessed.